Hi, I'm Bruce Pattinson from the Total Education Centre, and thank you for watching today's video. We really hope you enjoy these videos and that they teach you something new. If they do, please give us a like down below on the button and let us know. If you have any questions, don't forget you can contact us through the channel or through the website. And don't forget to visit our website, totaleducationcentre.com.au. There you'll find all the lecture notes for these videos. You'll find student notes, teacher notes, you'll find old exam papers and things that will help you do your best in your studies. We hope you enjoy today's video. Please enjoy it. Hi, I'm Bruce Pattinson. Today's episode is on Cloudstreet. We're going to talk about the characters in Cloudstreet, a little bit about each character, how the two families interact together, and a little bit about it. So here under the jacaranda tree in the front yard, we're going to actually talk about Cloudstreet characters. Well, now welcome back, and we're here to talk about the characters in Cloudstreet, and probably start with Sam Pickles, who's not the main character in the story, but one who starts the story off and runs. His character is linked very closely to the theme of fate and or luck, I suppose, and Sam's a gambler, and there's no doubt, and probably the quote that represents him best of all is the quote, "His luck had waxed and waned. Like a gambler, he thought the equation was about even." And of course we know that it's not even, and Sam not only loses the fingers on one of his hands in an accident, but he's completely unlucky in his gambling for most of his life. He's always running out of money, the family's always poor, he has the occasional big win where they do extremely well, and then all of a sudden the money's gone, the furniture's being sold. The only salvation that he has really is Cloudstreet. And Cloudstreet is left to him in a will from his uncle, or the family's uncle, and that may be debatable in itself. And what happens with Cloudstreet is there's a caveat in the will that he can't sell Cloudstreet for 20 years. And that's very important to the family because it gives them some basis for security in life, and it also introduces the lambs into the text. Cloudstreet's a significant part of their lives and becomes significant right through the text, hence the name of the novel. It's also important to remember that he goes after 20 years, he's thinking about selling it, and he speaks to the Aboriginal man who says place is very important to him. And we need to remember that sense of place when we think about Cloudstreet. So what else is it about Sam? And I'll give you some key words for Sam to help you think about where you should be going with that character. Impulsive, ambitionless, and I'd like to talk a little bit about work before I continue on giving you the other words, because Sam never really wants to work. He has a reasonable work ethic, and in the end he gets a job at the Mint, which is ironic in itself. Holds that job down, but at the end of it does very little. His whole life is focused on the gambling, that one hope for big luck. His relationship with Dolly is extremely intricate, and it's unhappy and uneventful in many ways because they just don't seem to be able to link the relationships together. Dolly sees him as a husband for some parts of it and as a man of weakness at others, and of course she has lots of affairs, and Sam's left behind in that regard. His relationship with Rose is reasonably close at times, and she sees him as a father, although he's not a very good one, and the relationship between them waxes and wanes, much like his fortune throughout the text. We'll talk about her a little bit later. It does have an interesting relationship with the lambs that grows and develops as the novel moves on, and is also, we must remember and think about the section where he tries his suicide attempt and he's saved by Rose, and that's probably the lowest, obviously the most logically lowest point, the nadir of the novel for him. So that's Sam. We can talk about a little bit about him. I'd like to move on. We could talk about Rose. Rose is a more prominent character, and much of the narrative focuses on her throughout the text. Rose is the only daughter of the Pickles family and is always seen as the most mature of her family. Dolly's the loose woman of poor morals, and Rose is the one who looks after her. She goes to the pub to get her. She tries to look after her and tries to create some stability and order in the family. And I think Rose's whole life and the adaptation of her life is focused on finding some sort of constant nurturing, and she's always looking for someone to be close to her and nurture her in that particular way. Rose also has 2 bouts of anorexia in the novel, and we need to note both those points. The first time is despite a mother and the second time is when she loses a baby. Two really significant incidents in her life that lead her to anorexia. The first one ends when she gets a job and becomes independent, and Sam notices then that the flesh grows back on her bones, basically. And then she marries Quick and has a relationship with him, loses the baby, and then ends up having another baby at the end. The relationship that she does have that's unsuccessful, that she learns a lot from, is from Tobey Raven. You need to note that as part of her growth and development. He's not for her. He sort of uses her and mocks her in the end, and she grows and learns a lot from that, though, and I think that's a significant part. Wax Harry's the final completion, the birth of her first baby, and that's the completion of the novel for her. She has someone with Quick to nurture and look after, and she's back in the bosom of the family, and they both move back into Cloudstreet. She only has those two significant relationships, and Quick, of course, is the most significant relationship she has in the novel. She marries him, and they seem very happily married, in fact, although Quick, obviously, ironically, is slow in many ways. Let's talk about the next character. We've got a lot of different lambs, and I'll talk about the Lamb family. They're very different from the Pickles family. Whereas the Pickles are what you'd probably call happy-go-lucky and in that knockabout Australian sort of way, and aren't very focused except for Rose. The Lamb family are all very focused. Oriel Lamb keeps them extremely closely tied together. She knits that family and binds them together with an amazing work ethic. She, like the lambs of God in many ways at the start of the novel, they're very faithful, they're a very strong God-fearing family, and they work very hard to be that and to construct a life around that. And then Samson, or Fish as he's called in the novel, our narrator, and I'll talk about that later, certainly shows that changes the whole family, and they move to the city, they move into Cloudstreet. Fish is obviously damaged from the drowning that he has, and the near drowning, and he's brought back to life in a miracle, but the miracle obviously, as they say in the text, leaves some part of him behind. And I think you'll find that the Lamb family provide much of the humour in the text, and when you have a look at Lester and he's telling jokes and playing guitar, sitting around the kitchen table playing spin the knife and doing all those sort of party things that they do in the Lamb family, they bring that sense of humour and certainly the laconic Australian lifestyle, except for Oriel, who drives them all and pushes them all along. And I think the Lamb family are a lovely contrast to the Pickles, and it says in the text that the house is in two sides. You have this one side of Lamb family industry and the other side of the Pickles of sort of indolence, and the Lambs with their shop out the front, they're always busy doing stuff. They turn the backyard into a vegetable garden, whereas the Lambs just grows ramshackle until Oriel moves out into the tent under the tree near the pig that's in the backyard. At the end of the novel, the two families are united together, of course, and we see in that final section where the two matriarchs of the families move in together and back into the house, and everyone's back in the house and everyone seems at one. Let's have a look at some of the other characters, some of the more minor characters in it very quickly. We have the black fella, or the black man as he's called in the novel. He's the indigenous Aboriginal element in the novel, who brings lots of the spirituality to it. And he's often seen as the conscience or voice of reason in the text. He keeps reappearing to the family in times of need and gives advice, such as telling Sam not to sell Cloudstreet. He makes other appearances throughout the novel, and Winton uses him to remind the reader that Australia does have an Indigenous population who weren't treated all that well during the period that the novel goes from. And we see this uncomfortableness when he steps inside the house and he senses about the Aboriginal girls and the one who killed herself with ant poison there. And you'll find that quote on page 62. He does add that element of spirituality, and I think that you need to think about his ephemeral presence, how it comes and goes in the novel and where it appears and why it appears in that particular way. Some of the other minor characters, and I'll just put some words out there for those characters to let you think about it, or the lecture will go on too long. Tobey Raven, for example, ambitious, selfish, sophisticated, educated, and certainly ruthless in his treatment and his ambition to get ahead. He's not a very popular character in Winton's writing, in fact, and you can see Winton's criticising his life and his lifestyle. G.M. Clay, the adulterer, businessman, he abandons his family. He's a weak character, ex-army, and he tries to use that, but really he's not the sort of man that Lester, for example, is held up to be in the end, although he has his flaws too. You need to remember that Winton portrays all of his characters with some flaws amongst the positives, and I think if you look at the characters in that way, you'll see that they're very human characters, and that's why Cloudstreet's such a popular book. Lucy Wentworth, Quick's first love, as we shall say, ambitious, a very loose moral girl, wants to leave the countryside to become a florist, and she gets her wish when they're caught on the highway, engaged in activities. Beryl Lee the Widow, the Catholic, lonely, hard-working woman. In the end, she knows she loves Lester, but she goes to the convent. She says she's in love with God. And finally, the initiator of Cloudstreet, Uncle Joel. Was he really an uncle? He's the catalyst for the story. He leaves the Pickles Cloudstreet, dies face down with a heart attack. He's the one who drives and originates it. Well, that's sort of basically an overview of some of the characters in Cloudstreet. Obviously, it's a very long novel. It's a meandering story that goes over 2 decades or more. So you need to pick and choose what you talk about and who your characters you talk about. If you look at it very carefully, and we'll talk about that in the next lecture when we talk about themes and ideas, I think you'll find that many of the characters marry into those themes and ideas very closely, and they'll give you that textual integrity when you write your essay that binds it all together. Well, that's all for this afternoon. My name is Bruce Pattinson from Total Education Centre. I hope you've enjoyed this lecture.